Okay, I'll pass it on to Caroline to introduce our guest speaker for the day.
Thank you. Well, that got a reaction, didn't it? We got mood lighting. So, mood with an M. Oh, you rascals. Okay. Okay, so today we have a wonderful speaker who will just amaze you, enthuse you with his skills, his photography. Landscape photographer Alex McNaught. I'm sure, well, some didn't read the book. I had the privilege of hearing Alex talk at my camera club, and they gave him a free rein for an hour, and it was amazing. And you've kindly come along today, a little compact delivery, but I will just hand over and let you tell your own story. Thank you for coming today, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, Caroline. Just a bit of housekeeping. Can everyone hear me clearly? Is it all good? Okay, cool. I've just got a camera running up there just to record me talking, and I'll put that up later. Won't see anyone. It's not about that. It's just a record of the talk, and I'll have that up as a YouTube link later if anyone wants to listen to the address. I guess sounds a little bit formal. And the introduction is interesting. As a landscape photographer, yes, I definitely do wear that hat. And Caroline and I had an email exchange, of course, in organising things, and she said, "How do you want to get introduced?" And she said, I said to her, "Well, why don't you do what you want to call me as, and I'll describe myself after that," because it brings into play an interesting concept, which is, of course, identity. Who are you? What do you do is often the kind of thing that you label yourself as, or other people label you. And I'm hopeful, by the reaction I heard earlier, that the recognition of me as a landscape photographer is, in fact, here in Port Macquarie, a thing that I very much do. It's a full-time business for me, and I cover a wide range of topics, and I do it with a great deal of pleasure. And I'm glad that it is hitting its mark in terms of being received well by the community in bringing joy to the viewers and all the sites that I can cover. And it itself brings to mind the sort of, I guess, the core identity. That's a label, and another label I might call myself is a geographer. And a geographer has the same properties, same qualities, if you like, that a photographer does, except a geographer might look at more things in more technical detail. And so I've had that love for as long as I can remember. And I had taken out the school geography prize. It's been something that's been part of me since forever. And photography is a layer that's been added since, as I go into my teenage years. And so from geography, I branched out into a subject called geophysics when I left school. I had Air Force as my second choice, like to be a pilot, but science won out. So I ended up studying geophysics because I liked physics as well as geography. So I ended up doing 2 degrees in geophysics. And geophysics is particularly strong here in Australia because we have a weathered continent. You can't see stuff, but there's stuff down there to dig up. How do you know? Geophysics is the science of finding it. It's also the science of looking at planets. It's a remote sensing science. And so when I have my camera and I swing the camera around, or I'm jet skiing with friends from the Murray River, I look at a river bank. I say, oh, that will look interesting with this kind of light. Then I'm thinking of cross sections of velocity profiles, deposition, erosion, all the kinds of things keep on crossing that don't seem related, but in fact they very much are. So geography is I guess, my core identifier if I had to nominate one, but from that comes everything else. So I ended up going in studying geophysics. Geophysics involved in computers, and I didn't want to do computers. I wanted to study geophysics. So no, you've got to do computers because geophysics is about data acquisition, data modelling, mathematical modelling, inversion, spatial and geospatial presentation so that you can have a full X marks the spot or doesn't mark the spot. Don't waste your time. Have a closer look here. In doing that year of computing that I was required to do, I ended up loving computing so much I did all 3 years of it. And so I extended my candidature and I brought in postgrad geophysics while I was an undergraduate, got distinctions for that. And so I could do all 3 years of computing. I probably have nearly a 3rd degree in computing alone. So I ended up getting heavily involved in computing, as many geophysicists do. Same mindset, same aptitude. mining is quite cyclic. You can have high demand for your skills at one time, and you'll be driving taxis at another time, depending on what the mining industry is doing. But geophysicists have a little bit of an out, and they are very amenable to computing. So they often find employment in the computing industry. And so it was with me. My professor said there's a job going in a mining company headquartered in Circular Quay. Apply there. I did, got the job. It was a small computer running in a cupboard. This was back in the 80s, so they weren't really the kind of computers that you're used to now. And I started there, and by the time I finished there in 4 or 5 years, it had expanded to a national network of very large computers. I went over to Kalgoorlie, commissioned their computer system for the gold mining operations and so on. But then I started to plateau in terms of the things that I was learning. I wanted to learn more. And so a job was advertised in the Southern Highlands, south of Sydney, for a company that was a leader in its field at the time in three-dimensional computer graphics and mining and exploration software and so on. So that's excellent. I'll apply there, got the job, and started working there. And they started a good 25 years down in the Southern Highlands, doing all the kinds of things that I love, getting right into the guts of it. And so I ended up finding several things that I could do to improve their business. I found that they were doing things in a very tough way in terms of sending a tape out to an engineer in the mine site and with software modifications and going backwards and forwards, very time consuming. I said, no, you can do better than that. Because when I was doing the computer science side of things, I was very much into computer languages. I said, I can solve this problem that you're having. And I ended up creating for them a complete different approach to the way they do it. I can give the engineer in the field a language that he can type in things, commands and processes and logic that describes what he's interested in doing. And that gets into the core, the mathematical core of the software without us having to write dedicated software for. So there's a whole solution I offered them. So I got into computer graphics as the next thing there. They had big plotters doing big maps and so on, but often that could get quite cluttered depending on where the labels were. It's an intrinsically hard problem to solve because you don't know what label is going to get labeled on top of what, depending on what the layers are and everything else. Too hard to solve programmatically. So I can solve this with a generalized computer graphics editor. And so instead of going straight to the plotter, come to me, I'll offer a software that person could drag the labels around, and when they're happy with how it looks, punch it out, instantly clear maps. And so we went further. They were doing things on big mainframes, needed whole rooms to run that old kind of approach. And desktop computers were just coming to the 90s now, were just coming out and were just viable to put software on. But the trouble was, memory was too expensive, $1,000 a megabyte. They had 25 megabytes of memory needed for their programs. 10 megabytes on a 386 PC was $10,000 at that time alone. How's it going to work? I can get this thing called virtual memory going because of the things that I was doing with computers. I said, I know how to solve this problem. This is what you want to do. And so I provided them the means, the technology to take their mainframe computers and squeeze it down onto a desktop computer, which means they go onto mine sites, didn't need special rooms, didn't need special power, and work could be done on the mine site, which is really important for timely returns of the optimization of digging and everything else that you've got to do. So I went over to Denver, got their Denver office set up, and that was fantastic. I thought, this is great. Let's keep going. And I was really interested in going to get to the handheld part of the world. So let's bring computing power down into that handheld thing is what I want to do. But they weren't interested in that. They wanted to actually take a backward step to more workstations. So now I'll hang out my own shingle, ended my time there and developed my own range of business applications, taking mining and mapping and everything else technologies and applying it to the business world. And so I created a whole range of products that could take an Excel spreadsheet of sales numbers and territories and turn them into maps and vice versa, so you can have a way more detailed understanding. I am getting to the photographer point, by the way. This is just a potted history, just to show you where I'm coming from, because I think it can be interesting to know where a person has been. And so I'm doing all of this, and the upside of all of that was to create a stable revenue, because then I could have cash flow for one-man band, and then I could start investing in mobile technology. Don't forget, this is the late 90s, so there's not much around except Nokia. So nothing like you accept now, coloured screens, GPS, network graphics, none of that existed. So I'm building a mobile application ultimately that got licensed to Optus in 2000, 2001 in the original .com era, .com boom that you might remember at the time. And I was right at the forefront, right at the bleeding edge, providing a commercial service to Optus, which ran gangbusters. So you could find friends, find the nearest pizza on a very primitive screen, solved all the problems, looked at cell towers, looked at coordinates, looked at azimuths of antennas, looked at population densities to do an inferred GPS, to put it into my system so I could pop out with an answer. So these are the kinds of things I've been involved in. And I was very much wanting to keep going with that. And then the wheels started to fall off on me. I had, at that stage, 5 children and a very busy time going to all of their sports events and everything else. And I attended everything during the week, during the day that other fathers couldn't, because I could just make up my own hours, which are always 100 hours, working at 2 o'clock in the morning all the time. And what's happening over this time frame is that also I end up with corrupt partners, corrupt investors, and corrupt clients. Nokia took me over to the Philippines to sell to their big customers there, signed a multi-million dollar contract. They reneged on it. Strike one. Okay, let's go back. Let's do another thing. Optus then falls over as the revenue base because they get bought out by Singtel. They didn't want to know about renewing a third license while they're busy shedding people to make their numbers look good. Strike two. All right. Found a company in Sydney, had big contracts with Vodafone in Europe. Again, millions of dollars. Bang, all disappeared after the work was done. Didn't get anywhere. All the same time, at this particular point, my family life is becoming completely untenable. I had, unfortunately, been experiencing what can only be described as increasing isolation and emotional abuse. And my wife came from an emotionally abusive father. Her mother was a saint. But I found myself stuck in this situation. And as I tried to fix it, to go and let's go counselling, didn't want to do that. Couldn't understand why not, but it's only because she had everything where she wanted it to be. And my friends weren't coming because they said, well, they just weren't feeling welcomed by her. So I was getting increasingly isolated and increasingly crushed financially and emotionally and everything else. Something's got to give. Can't keep going like that. So my wonderful partner, Helen, take a move here to Port Macquarie, do a complete life reboot, well and truly needed. If I stayed back there all that time, I'd be gone. There's no question about it. So in Port Macquarie, what do we do? Helen is extremely supportive, absolutely knows my story, and is happy for me to take the time to recover and to rebuild. It took some extensive and patient legal action to finally get the assets of the marriage wound up so that I had some finances so that I could move forward. But you've still got to make a fundamental decision. You still have to decide, do I or don't I go out and do anything, or do I just stay in a black hole? They're your fundamental two choices. Quite understandable if I fell into a black hole. But decided to go all out. So one of the things in going all out, particularly with some money in my pocket, I could start to buy some gear when I'm unable to work, unable to think, unable to be productive on any kind of consistent basis, unlike before when I used to do so much. Barely going on one cylinder, let alone all 8. So photography, one of my original passions and one of the ones that was lost in this emotional abuse that I was subject to. It was never going to get encouraged. It was never going to have the light of day. Now I can bring it back. And I can bring other things back too. I can bring in my motorcycling that I was doing and all of the things that I'm doing. So photography, yes. Not only is it a good thing to do because you're communicating the beauty of the outside world, my love of geography can be expressed through the lens. It's also a self-healing thing to do because the pleasure that it gives me can give pleasure to others. So it's a double win, if you like. So my photography is something that I've taken to whatever is the sky is the limit. So I've got drones, I've got cameras on water, underwater, everything. Let's open up the taps. And it answers the question, or at least tries to answer the question, what happens if you free yourself of that weight and open up all the taps? And let's see what is possible. And so I'll bring in a few other identities because that's a bit of a thread here. So photography, yes, absolutely, always is and always will be. So let's bring in some other things. Lately, I've been doing some sand art. You may have seen the sand art, some may be aware. It's another thing to bring pleasure to the viewer and pleasure to the doer. So I've been doing that at different beaches and making a nice addition to the local scene, if you like. And even more recently, I've added kinetic art. Kinetic art and interactive art is something that is quite recent and goes way back to when I was doing my year of electronics in the first geophysics degree. It was a bit boring then, but now it's really interesting. I can get a hand to wave up and down. I've written all the software to do all the interactions, and I could use 3D printing, which is amazing technology, by the way. 3D printing to create all these objects that I have in mind, and then I could make them move and light up and react according to your hand. So again, I create another added identity, if you like, of something that I do. And just lately, Helen and I have been doing bubbles down at Town Beach. We had the great fortune to go to Iceland last November and December. And on the way to and from, we stayed with friends at Rome. And in a piazza in Rome, we saw this person busking. They've got a hat out, but they're doing bubbles, large bubbles. And I thought, look at the reaction of everyone. Absolutely everyone's enjoying it. So let's research this when we get home. So after a bit of trial and error, we finally worked on the gun solution of what we need to use for the bubble solution, what we need to use for chords. And now we go down on a Sunday morning and we sometimes co-opt a friend to join us because it's good for him to join in too. Make big bubbles. And who doesn't like bubbles? So we're getting great reactions from kids and adults alike. So when you say photographer, I could equally say half a dozen other things as well, but I will be mainly a photographer for you today. So when Caroline, and that's my backstory, just to give you a bit of a heads up. So when you see someone just, I'm a this, I'm a that, or I'm the other, how much of it is just the tip of the iceberg and how much is underneath, you don't know. So I thought I'd give you just a bit of a backstory, just in case you were interested. So I got in 2 videos today. So Carol and I discussed, well, what would be interesting. I suggested Wales, because Wales are well known here in Port Macquarie. It's very much a great viewing location along the coast for a couple of reasons. We have an active spotter up on the headland. We have a good headland. We've got a good projection out into the sea. We see to the north and to the south. It goes tick, 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 tick with all the boxes that are needed for very successful whale viewing locations. So I've got whale video, and Caroline suggested, well, what about floods? And so some of you may remember that I have done flood video, both in 2021, the first one that when I was here after we moved, and 2025 again. And those flood videos, I believe, are an important historical record. People can see where the flooding reaches and where it doesn't. I've literally had people come to me and say, we bought or not bought on the basis of seeing where the flooding is. You can see it house by house. Even a metre makes a difference in some streets. So I've got a great record of the flooding. So I'm going to do a bit of a running commentary of the video. I hope none of this triggers any bad feelings. My apologies in advance if it does. But it's just going to be a few snippets here and there. On my YouTube channel, I've got 600 videos all organised into 20 playlists so that you can easily drill into different topics of interest and see the full thing if you wish. So I will start this. My apologies also for speaking fast. I know time is limited, so I'm trying to pack in a lot. In the camera club, I had a bit more time, so I was able to expand a bit. So I'm just covering a lot of ground here. So I'll start this video now, and I'll give a bit of a running commentary. Hopefully you'll see this okay with the dimmed lights. So in the 2021 floods, I had a fairly standard drone that you'd buy in any retail store, and I could only fly when it's not raining. So I have got a different drone now. I'll explain when we get to there. So I went out at the first opportunity to the torrential downpour ceased, give me a bit of a bubble. And the question I had was, well, what happened? There's all this rain. So I went down to Town Beach and I was just amazed at the volume of water coming out and all the debris in it. It was just incredible. And so I started to go section by section in different parts of town saying, well, wonder what's going on here, and I wonder what's going on there. And that's what this is a compilation of. It was a very contracted version of the different sections of town that were affected by the floods, and you can see how extensive it reaches into some places, and you'll see even more in a minute. These poor businesses always seem to suffer a fair bit when there's inundation. The 2025 flood wasn't quite as high, but it was still bad. So the canals area, you can see all of the boat wraps and so on coming up out of the water. Normally they walk down to them, but they're pivoted and so they point up. I had a friend who's in the canals, and the water went about 3 feet into his bottom garage, not into the main house, but all the bottom areas are gone. This is what I mean by, plus or minus a metre makes a difference. This is coming onto Settlement Point Road, so that bend just dips down just that little bit more to be subject to flooding. If you're on that side of it, you're okay. This side of it, not okay. When I did this section again in the 2025 floods, I was busy flying my drone. I pick a point each time and just fly in a bit of a bubble around each one of those points. And this blue shirt appeared next to me. It was police. I thought, oh no, what have I done? He recognised the name on the back of my jacket and thanked me for the work that I was doing. So that's cool. Nice to know it's noticed and appreciated. And it's just a historical record. I don't ever want to get too close to somebody's property. I don't want to be intrusive, but we all need to know what's there. And so that's sort of why I fly at a bit of a distance and try not to go too close. But when you do go a little bit closer, you do see the impact, unfortunately. But I don't do much of that. Hastings River Drive, Aldi just on the left. I saw some kids swimming in the driveway of Aldi. It was that deep. Coming up to probably one of the worst sections that are affected, which is around the Hibbards Ferry area. There's a lot of housing in behind those trees, and they all get smashed.
Alex, where were you standing?
I was on the only tiny little bit of dry spot just near Hibbards Ferry, just at the traffic lights there. It was just about 4 inches above the water. I could walk through the water, don't mind, but I need something where to drive to take off and land. So I just flew up and down here. Always very limited distance from my takeoff point. But you can see how extensive it goes right back into there. I had my horse adjusted in those trees in a paddock, and I had to evacuate him out that night, the night before it really went up to its maximum. So I went in the afternoon and found it was up to my shins, and went in. Then it was up to my thighs. I thought I've got to get him out. So I brought him out while it was in the dark, and Helen organised a truck for transport for our horse. And just as well, because when I went back a couple of days later, I found that his shed upper head height was the water. He would never have made it. So he was back there in amongst all of that. You can see the tiny little pockets that are okay and those that are not okay. After this flood, I wanted to see where it all came from. There's three river systems draining into Port. Port's the gateway, and water's got to get out through Port. So I went right up into the hinterland on my motorbike, and I found even 40 kilometres upstream, metres high, the upstream side of trees were stripped of their bark, so an absolute torrent came out of those hills. No warning here, no idea that it was coming. It's only because I went backwards and forwards to check on my horse I could see the water going crazy, and we're going to have a high tide at 2 o'clock. No warning at all, no idea that it was coming to smash us. So just as well I got him out. That lake in the back there is where his paddock was. You can see the little dry patch. So again in 2025, by this stage I've upgraded my drone to a big one. Need a license for it, but it's designed for emergency services and everyone else. So it flies in high winds, horizontal rain, doesn't have an issue. So I was a bit more flexible in flying this second time. And even though it was raining, I could still fly. So I got different footage in different locations. I'm not going to repeat the same areas, that were flooded before. So here for this clip, I've decided just to do a few different areas, a bit more down at the front, a bit more out behind. But you can see the force of the water coming out. The tide was just unable to push back against it. And the volume, it just comes out, bang, instantly we go to flood because it's just all arrived. You can see where I do my sand drawing, not. It took a year to recover. It was absolutely smashed to bits. Stones, sand was gone. It took a year. And it's still touch and go. Sorry with the sound going up and down. I don't know quite what's going on there. Ah, okay. Yeah, should it just cuts it down when I talk by the sounds. That's me there taking what little shelter I could in the rain. It's actually raining at the moment. Goodness me, I've got cold and wet doing my photography, I tell you. But I love how I can just cover anything now, no matter what goes on, how high the wind is, how hard the rain is, I can still get it. See, by now all the water's mixed up. It's just dominated everything. It's still pushing out against the sea. It's just rapids, nothing more. It's got to go somewhere. Port's between it and the sea. And council do a really brilliant job. They are straight down there. They're cleaning that up. They're getting in there. They're getting all the logs out, and they've got to come back several times because the stuff's still floating in the water. Stuff's still coming down the stream. It eddies around here. It gets pushed up to high tide. Another great slab of logs, and they keep coming day after day until it's gone. They do a brilliant job. So with this all-weather drone now, I'm able to go to places like Telegraph Point. I can get up to the Pacific Highway and get myself to a few points. And even if it's raining at the time, I'll still fly and get footage. But you can see how extensive it is.
Have you lost your drone?
No, I don't like that. So that's Hastings River Drive here. Port's over there, and we're just swinging around to look at Burdens over here. So you can see when they put the road close, why they mean it. Please obey the road close signs. We're all good citizens here, I'm sure you do. There's a home building place there. Just let me pause this for a second. Yeah, there was a home building sign there, and I got an amusing photo of two kids pulling up in a boat next to this billboard that's in floodwaters selling you your dream home. So the second part of the video is something a lot more pleasant, which is Wales. I've been fortunate enough to have gone and developed a relationship with Lee Mansfield, the local whale spotters. He calls me all the time, so I don't have to be down there all day, every day. Something interesting, I get to know about it, and friends who are also up and down on a regular basis. So we only live about a mile or so from the house. I go backwards and forwards dozens of times a week sometimes. And if you go enough times, if you turn up enough times, you'll see things. Put in the effort, put in the time. And so I've been lucky over the few years that I've been doing this to gather all kinds of different whale behaviours you just don't get to see on a single casual visit. So here's an interesting one that was last year, was that whales sleeping. And I've got reports that, well, I think the whale's dead. I'm thinking, well, what do you do with a dead whale that's floating in the water for a start? But I'll go down and have a look. And it was just sleeping, like tired mums and dads do. You've got to have a bit of a snooze every now and then. And it has some ability, I don't know how it works, just to right itself, take a breath, and then go back again until it needs to breathe again. In the meantime, it just lolls around like it's dead, but you can see a little bit of movement every now and then. And you can see this one's got a calf. The calf's hanging by mum's nose, not going anywhere. So I actually went backwards and forwards with Lee and National Parks, looking at the video and the footage, and the conclusion we reached to that is in fact sleeping. And there's another adult whale nearby. I'm assuming that's some kind of protection arrangement that they have. So the calf's always going to get covered with safety, while mum has a much needed rest. Got to sleep somewhere sometime. An amazing sight to see. At the other end of the spectrum is mating pursuits. They're all hot on the heels, and it gets very busy. They go very vigorously. They are very close. Sometimes they buffet and try and bump their rival out of the way, and bubbles going, and it gets very busy when you see one of these mating pursuits go past. There's puffing, everything going on. I got some really good footage on this one, and I think it was the ABC that picked it up. So a lot of the stuff that I do turns up in Channel 7 and 9 and ABC and so on. My first flood video got invited by BBC, a live interview. So a lot of the material that I generate goes around and turns up in the most surprising places, just by virtue of just going out there and making an effort. And check this out. I believe whales just love to play, and they do. This was from last year, and I've got one just a few days ago of a pair of whales playing with the dolphins. You'll see that on my YouTube channel, and I'll have cards out the front, and I've got all my details on the back. So feel free to come up and help yourself to the card and get yourself onto the channel, and you can see all my whale videos from this year, for example. This one's pregnant, and you can tell that because it's quite round, and you start to see a bit of white on the sides, and particularly near the tail. Instead of being all black and tapered back, you see white along the sides. And they love to come in close and just very slow. They're very close to giving birth, hours, days at most. We've had a live birth in Lake Cat-Eye. I missed out by just only a few hours of getting, because it's down there, can't see it, can't find it, have to wait for it to come to Tacking Point. I don't know whether you've seen humpbacks feeding, but this is what they do. Again, just dumb luck. Out there, oh, look at those whales, wonder what they're doing. That's what they're doing. The only time I caught it. And it's funny, you know, on the post that I put up, these things, people are adamant. They hold a point of view and they won't release it. Whales don't feed on migration. On the very post where I'm showing them feeding on migration, what do you do? And this is the thing about photography and video. It's, you can't argue with the truth. And I do a bit of environmental monitoring. I make sure that I cover ugly things as well, mining, and even though I was involved in it, you know, we've all got to be a bit mindful of the impact of our uh, um, position on the planet. So I use the camera in multiple different spheres and make sure I document housing developments that are unsustainable and other things like that. Amazing, isn't it? Here's the newborn. That was the one that was born in Lake Cat-Eye just a few hours before. So you can see they're very, very light in colour. In a few hours, their little dorsal fin will come up. So you have a bit of a gauge on how old they are when you see that. So I had to lie in wait at Tacking Point in the hope that they would be seen. If they were born off Lake Cat-Eye, very flat, no spotter, not going to find it. So go up to Tacking Point and lie in wait, if you like. Yeah, they come up the Lighthouse Beach, nice and shallow, fly out, get the video. So again, you see what I mean about the pre-birth shape, very rotund, with the white showing out because the belly's out, and just lolling about in the shallows. So close to getting a birth. One day I hope I'll get it. And here's an unfortunate aspect of whale. You can see that it's trailing rope and buoys. So it's an entanglement situation where they run across lobster pots and everything else that's out there. So national parks have me on speed dial. So if they need me, I would just drop everything and go and give them the detailed images that they need so they can then brief their rescue crews. There's one based here in Port Macquarie, and they can understand the nature of the entanglement. I've got their full authority to go as close as I like. Normally I'm fly at 500 feet and I zoom in with a powerful zoom, so I'm nowhere physically near the whales. But on these occasions, I come down close with a wide angle so I can get detail from all the angles and they can see everything they want to see. Normally up 500 feet, I zoom in, I'm nowhere near them.
Use a polarized lens?
No, not on that drone. You'll often find accessory filters like that are only made for the more mass market popular models. Mine's a highly specialized one and nothing's made for it. So here's a very special whale, a southern right whale. I'm also part of the National Parks Citizen Science Program. So the east coast population of the southern right whales are in endangered low numbers. So any spotting is a great thing. Port Macquarie is at the far end of the northern range, so we'll only see one or two a year if lucky. So this one amazingly turned up in the river mouth. And so it was just fantastic because people could then just walk along the path there and see it, where normally we would find one or two a year out to sea at the best. But bringing a calf into the river mouth was incredible. Everyone could see it there. So we're getting towards the end of the video. I'm just sort of finishing it up here. Those white markings are called callosities. They're a unique marking for each individual, and they're like our fingerprint. So national parks love it because they can track numbers, look at birthing rates, calving rates, and get a sense of how the health of the population is going. So very active on the south coast at the moment. I'm getting lots of notifications around Tathra area and so on, but we're at the far end of their range, so we might not see one this year, I don't know. They are double the weight of a humpback, by the way. Can get up to 100 tons. Big, big, big. There we go. So I know I've covered a lot of ground, and I know I talk fast, and there was a lot of stuff that I ran over. I'm happy to take questions of any type, of any detail level that you
I
want.
have 2 mics doing that still. That's okay.
We're running toss.
We're
Yes,
right on time.
we're right on time.
I was just wondering, how far can you go from where you're standing to the extremity of your drone?
I do some testing of this is my 4th drone, of each drone that I do down the back of the beach, so we're very safe and out of the way place. As a guide, I've got 10 kilometres down to Lakota and 10 kilometres back in the central centre of Australia, where I've done big grid patterns for covering a large structure, not very far away, but it's got 19 kilometres on one set of batteries to give me a square grid of 300 photos that I can merge together to be a single high resolution photo. So yeah, it's got very substantial range, but I don't ever need to, and I don't want to go that kind of distance. But it's good to know what the limits are, so that you're always working with that knowledge, so that when you're looking at winds and everything else, you've got a very good buffer, if you like, safety buffer. Yes, exactly right.
Okay, we might
Mentioned, Alex mentioned earlier, is environmental credentials.
Yes.
As you all know, I was written by Black Cat-Eye, and Alex very kindly did quite a number of videos of the lake and system, so we could see some of the extent of some of the damages, particularly in the drought in 2019, 2020. I want to thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. And it's one of the goals I set myself when I escaped this situation I was in, to make a difference and to use whatever I can do to do that.
yes.
What's the cost of the drone?
The big one,
Yeah.
20,000.
Right, okay.
And you need a license for it, because it goes beyond the weight category. So typically when you go to a retail store, they're all in the unlicensed category. Basic set of rules anyone could look up, but this is a whole nother level.
You have to submit a flight plan to the.
No, not to fly, but
No.
you need to be properly licensed, and you have to pass all of their credentials and tests and everything else, so you know what to do.
You can't be flying around the air.
Oh, well, there's the universal rules for everyone, and that's one of them. But as a license holder, I can apply, but I've got to go through all the steps. When anyone else say, I'd like to fly to the airport, they'll just say no. But airports are 2 different types. You've got ones with and without towers. So the major airports like Sydney, Brisbane are towered airstrips. This is untowered. So you can't sort of fly along the runway, but you can fly within a K of it if you like. But it depends on what the plane movements are. The internationals and things with towers, with major regionals, you can't. So there's 2 types of airports that are all the same.
Actually, a request.
Yes.
I've seen how I've seen your sand sculpture things or whatever you want to
Oh
call
yes,
it, right?
sand art. Yes.
I'd love to have you back and give a talk about that.
Oh, I'd love to.
That
If
would
you were.
be really interesting, how you did it and all that stuff. It's just mind-boggling how you achieved.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it's a completely new area for me, because I don't have any drawing or illustrating background. I had to reach into my geophysical toolbox, believe it or not, to say, how do I do a large pattern in a blank area? Oh, I know how to do it. That's what I end up. I'd love to talk on it if you're interested.
Oh, wow. Look, we could stay another half hour, I'm sure. Oh, Alex, that has been a wonderful delivery of yourself and your skills, and how I also hear, and I heard it before, your generosity of spirit in what you're doing and the community, and that is very important component of you, and I think that's something we should all acknowledge. So thank you. It's a lovely balance. I think that's what we're feeling. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your interest.
Oh, and it sounds like we'd love to have you back again.
Happy to.
Happy to. Lovely. We love the big performances. Thank you so much.